My new work, Sapling, came out of a whole bunch of stuff that happened to me about a year ago. I was looking at my sister in the Age, and she was pictured talking about a beautiful ancient Red River gum tree that is about to be torn down to make way for a toll road. And the Wurundjeri people are saying, this is a relic of an ancient landscape and we should keep it. And I looked at the picture and I thought, wow, look at this tree. It's like, it's the only one. And it's surrounded by, I think, like 8 petrol stations. It was like seeing my work, but it was nature's installation, nature and artifice. It went to the core of what I'm interested in. And so I became really interested in this tree and I looked into it. And I learnt that it's been there for 300 years. So it was old before white people came here. It's incredibly beautiful. It has an incredible resilience. It survived incredible change and destruction and hardship. How can it reach out and get nutrients when it's surrounded by cement and roads? But it sits there quietly, turning pollution into air that we need to survive. And it reminds us of a different kind of pace of life, especially when we're on a highway going at high speeds. There are other speeds to life, the speed of plants. And thinking about the rights of plants, I came across the writing of Robin Wall Kimmerer, and she's a First Nations Potawatomi woman, and she's a biologist, but she brings her Indigenous knowledge to Western science. And she's so interesting because she talks about plants as though they have real agency. I mean, it's really changed the way I come to understand plants. The first thing she says is that we don't even have a language to understand their intelligence. And she talks about animism, like trees. As soon as we call it it, we objectify them. And objects don't really have intelligence, but plants do, and they have relationships, and they have connections. And she brings that all together in her fantastic work. And this all brought me to the idea of personhood for plants. And I'd always known about it because that's how we've tried to save old growth forests, by trying to make plants into people. And I sort of thought, oh, that's a very clever legal trick to sort of give them rights, and therefore we can't cut them down, like we can't cut down people. But it's got some limitations because we're still anthropomorphize them. We're still saying they're like us and they should have the rights that we have. Whereas they don't want the things that we want. They want their own things. So all these things were whizzing around in my head when I was thinking about Sapling. How can I depict a relationship? And that's what my work is all about. How can I depict a relationship perhaps between humans and a plant chimera? Another thing that happened to me as well was that we were in Queensland and we went to visit a woman called Margit who fosters tree kangaroos. She nurtured these creatures, but she kind of had no desire to domesticate them. And I was really inspired by that. And she had this beautiful connection with a tree kangaroo. And he used to just hop on her shoulders and they would just walk around. And I was just struck by their intimacy. It was like their heads were so close together. And when heads are together, there's like this innate understanding that these two entities, these two personalities, have an intimacy, a connection. And I wanted that in the work. And that's where the pose comes from. The other thing is that Dennis Daniel, who's been working with Peter and me for years and a very big part of the studio, was there with me. And I just thought, oh, he's a father. He had children at the same time as we did. And he's a beautiful father. And I thought, maybe I'll do a paternal relationship. I mean, I've done lots of maternal relationships because I feel I know about that. But I hadn't done many paternal relationships. And I thought it was time to do that. Sapling is a depiction of a relationship between a man and a plant chimera. The man could be a father, and the plant chimera could be his son, and he's holding him the way fathers hold their children on their shoulders. When we look at the sculpture, we see a child that looks fleshy, and then we look closer and we see the skin, which is kind of bark-like, and there are knots in his skin, and where there should be digits, there are roots. And the features of his face are not quite what we're used to. They're made out of leaves. There's hair, but they're almost like mycelium or roots or something like that. To me, he's really beautiful and kind of wondrous. I chose to depict the child as a plant, animal, chimera because we just don't have that relationship with plants yet. Like, I could have put a plant on Dennis's back and then it'd be, what's that guy got a pot plant on his back for? Like, it just wouldn't work. We don't have that relationship with plants yet. And so I needed to tell this story around the kind of nurturing relationship that we can have. And that also there could be a potential for reciprocity because plants do give things to us, but we could give things back in return. And so to me, it's an incredibly optimistic work. It depicts the kinds of relationship with plants that we can have where we don't consider them just dumb things that we can use as a resource. The relationship is one where humans are nurturing and there's a kind of recognition of the very different way of being that plants have.